Have you ever tried to save money so strictly that you had to cut pieces out of your own life? Less eating out, fewer small pleasures, fewer quiet moments. And despite all that sacrifice, have you ever felt that one unexpected problem could come and wipe everything out in an instant? We are often told that saving means security. The stronger the savings, the calmer the heart, they say. But sometimes, as savings grow, fear grows with them. In a crowded industrial district on the edge of the city, there lived a man named Daniel. Daniel worked long hours as a machine operator in a metal workshop. The workshop was always the same: loud noise, repetitive movements, endless rhythm. He wasn't poor, but he was never ahead either. His salary covered the rent, groceries, and his daughter Clara's school expenses. Nothing more. Each month felt like balancing on a thin rope. Daniel wasn't irresponsible. He rarely spent money. In fact, he was proud of being careful. While his coworkers ordered food, he ate what he brought from home. While others upgraded their phones, he repaired his old one again and again. He believed discipline was strength. But discipline was slowly turning into denial. One evening, Clara told him she wanted to enroll in an art class at school. It wasn't very expensive, but it wasn't mandatory either. Daniel looked at the numbers in his small notebook and gently said, "Maybe next term." Yet inside, he felt something harden. That night, after everyone was asleep, Daniel opened the hallway cabinet and took out a plain envelope. Written in black marker were the words, "Emergency Fund." He carefully counted the money. It wasn't much, but it was growing. He wanted it to grow even faster, so he began cutting more pieces from his life. No weekend coffee, no family outings, no replacing the old couch with broken springs. When his work boots cracked, he repaired them instead of buying new ones. Each sacrifice made the envelope a little thicker, and each sacrifice tightened something inside him. For a while, the growing savings gave him a sense of control, as if he had at least a small shield against the world. Around that time, the workshop reduced overtime hours. Not permanent, they said, just temporary. But temporary meant a smaller paycheck. Daniel felt his chest tighten. A week later, the washing machine broke and the kitchen floor flooded. It was a simple repair, but not a cheap one. Standing in the hallway, envelope in hand, Daniel stared at the words, "Emergency Fund." It felt as if they were accusing him. He opened it, and the machine was fixed. The money disappeared faster than he had imagined. The envelope grew thin again. Instead of feeling relieved, he felt exposed for a moment. From that day on, every expense felt like an attack. Every small problem seemed like proof that he hadn't saved enough. He laughed less. He stayed at the dinner table for shorter periods. He calculated more than he spoke. One evening, Clara noticed the change and asked, "Are we in trouble?" Daniel smiled. "No," he said. "We just need to be a little more careful." But deep inside, he didn't fully believe his own words. That night, he sat at the kitchen table longer than usual. He opened his notebook and looked at the numbers, but the result did not change. The envelope was in the drawer. There was still some money inside, but it no longer gave him comfort. He realized that when something broke, he couldn't produce a solution. He could only take money out of the envelope. Daniel kept saving, but the fear did not leave. It only grew deeper. Because now he understood how quickly savings could disappear. One day during lunch break, he saw a coworker named Marco fixing a broken drill instead of throwing it away. Marco had set up a small table in the corner of the workshop. Other workers brought him their tools, and he repaired them for a small fee. In that moment, Daniel noticed something else. Marco did not look anxious. He wasn't richer. He didn't earn dramatically more. But when something broke, he didn't panic. He had a skill that could answer the problem. The thought stayed with Daniel. That night, instead of pushing the envelope back into the drawer, he sat at the kitchen table and opened it, staring at it for a long time. He took the money out and counted it again. The amount made him feel fragile. For the first time, he asked himself a different question. What if feeling safe isn't about how much I save, but about how much I can produce? He thought of Marco repairing that drill. So the one who knows earns, he muttered to himself. That night, he placed the money back into the envelope. But this time, his hands did not tremble like before. He left the envelope on the table and stared at it for a long time. For years, he had tried to make it thicker. Now, for the first time, he admitted that its thickness was not enough. The problem was not that the envelope was thin. The problem was that it was his only source. Truly vulnerable was not the size of the savings, but his inability to create a solution when something broke. He picked up the envelope again and told himself, this money will run out one day. But what if he could build something that wouldn't? For the first time, that thought outweighed the fear. When he stood up from the table, his decision was not completely clear. He was no longer thinking only about protecting. He was thinking about increasing. The following week, Daniel used part of the envelope to enroll in an evening course on equipment maintenance and repair. Spending still felt risky, but this time it wasn't consumption. It was an investment in skill. The first weeks were not easy. Work during the day, class at night. Gradually, small repair jobs began to come his way and slowly turned into steady extra income. He didn't quit his job. He didn't chase big dreams. He simply increased his capacity. When overtime was reduced again at the workshop, he didn't freeze. He adapted. He improved. The emergency envelope was still there, but it was no longer his only shield. One evening, Clara placed the art course flyer on the table again. This time, Daniel did not push it aside. He calculated the cost, stayed silent for a moment, and then filled out the form. Clara couldn't believe it at first. Then she threw her arms around him. The joy on her face was brighter than it had been in a long time. He didn't do it in a moment of abundance. He did it because he was no longer making decisions out of fear. Saving was still part of his life, but it was no longer his only support. Because he had learned something, saved money can protect you for a while, but the one who can produce can rebuild himself. Security is not in the thickness of an envelope. It is in the ability to stand up again when needed. That is not called wealth. That is called resilience. And maybe the real question is this: where are you looking for security? Inside an envelope or inside your own capacity? If you value simple but real stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.